Hey guys, in this video I'm going to demonstrate the Rising Sun Photoshop action. So the way this action works, it's similar to all my other actions, is that you start off with your photo, you fill in your subject with any color, and you run the action, and this is the Rising Sun effect that the action will create. Now, every time you run this action, you'll get a different result. So all these textures there, position, rotation, opacity, things like that are all randomized. Okay, so let's now jump into Photoshop and have my photo here. So there's just a couple of things we need to check off. Just make sure your Photoshop file is set up correctly and you get the best possible result. So open up your photo and look into your layer panel here. Go to this top right hand corner icon, click on that, scroll down to the bottom and click on panel options. Just make sure this one down the bottom is ticked, add copy to copied layers and groups, click OK. Next, go to image mode. Always make sure you're in RGB color mode and 8 bits of channel is selected. Still in the image menu, go down to image size, just check the size of your photo. It's always best to work with high resolution photos with photo effect actions. Okay, so I recommend anywhere between 2000 and 4500 pixels when using photo effect actions. So, if you've opened up a photo and it's only 1500 pixels, it's worth just scaling up because you'll get a better result. You can use photos, over 5000 pixels. It's just that it's going to take a lot longer to play back. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Click OK there. So now what we need to do is load up the brushes that were included in the download. So if you just hit B anywhere over the canvas here, that'll activate the brush tool, right click, and it'll bring up the brushes panel. If you click on this icon here, and you can either go to load brushes or replace brushes. It doesn't matter. If you load the brushes, it's just going to stack down the bottom here. And if you replace brushes, it's going to replace all these with the ones you load up. So I'm just going to replace them, and I'm going to select the Rising Sun brushes.abr file that was in the download. Click on that, and they are the Rising Sun brushes there. Now, still with the brush tool out, always make sure your brush opacity is at 100% before running the action. You run into all sorts of errors if you have a really low opacity, say 10-20%. A lot of the time you won't recognize this, you won't realize this has happened, so always just make sure that that's at 100%. I'm just going to drag this back in here. Okay, so now what we need to do is load up the actions panel. Go to Window, Actions. It'll pop up to the side here. Click on this icon. Go to Load Actions and select the Rising Sun.atn file, and here it is here. Okay, so that's all ready to go, but what we need to do now is create our brush layer to fill in our subject with a color. So if you go to Layer, New Layer, and this layer must be called Brush, all in lowercase letters. The action will not work at all if you don't spell this correctly. Okay, you'll run into a select error if this step isn't done. So click OK. There it is there. So the idea is with the brush layer is that we trace around our subject and we fill it with a color. So what I'm going to do, I might actually use the quick selection tool here. Okay, because my subject's fairly contrasted against this background, it should be reasonably easy to select. I'm going to make sure sample all layers is checked. Okay, and I'm just going to click and drag around my subject now, and it should do a fairly good job of selecting him. Just come up here, let him go. I'm going to hold down Shift and just get this area in here. Okay, now if I fill in this selection now with a color, so if I hold down Alt backspace or Option backspace, that will fill our selection with a foreground color here, which I'll just make red. So if I do that, it's filled everywhere but my subject. So all I need to do is invert this selection. So Control Shift I or Command Shift I, that will invert that. Now I'll fill it again. There we go. I'm just going to zoom in here. Didn't quite get this skateboard, so I'm just grab my pen tool and just fill that in. Alright, it's done a fairly good job of selecting him, so that's all good. I'm going to open the Actions panel again. Okay, so here is the Rising Sun action. If you want to get an idea of how long the action's got to play back, you twirl open you click on this arrow here, and that reveals all the steps, and you've got this scroll bar. So when the action's playing back, you'll see the scroll bar go down, and it'll let you know how much time it's got to go. So I am just going to hit play, and there will be a pop-up pretty much as soon as you click play. And it says, in the next step, move, scale the white circle over your subject. The white circle represents a strong glowing light that will appear behind your subject in the final effect. After you have positioned the circle, hit enter on the keyboard and the action will resume. Click continue below to proceed. So all you need to do here is click continue. Okay, and you'll see this box appear around the circle. You'll notice that the action is paused. So all we're waiting on here is for you to move this circle somewhere, over your subject, and like it read, in the final result, this will appear as a glowing white light behind your subject. And say if I position it here, okay, the light is going to bleed much more intensely into our subject in that area. Alright, so I'm just going to place it somewhere up around here. Just go up a little bit. If you hold down Shift Alt or Shift Option while you click on these corner handles here, you can scale and constrain the proportions. So do that. So when you've positioned it where you want, all you need to do is hit enter, and then the action will play to the end. Okay, so it'll take about another minute to play back. So I'm just going to fast forward the video and jump to the result. Okay, action's all done. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just collapse the actions panel. I'm just going to extend this out a bit. Okay, so if you look into the layer panel after the action's finished, you will notice, the first thing you'll notice is that all these folders are open, and you probably want to collapse them really quick. And the way to do that is to hold down Control, Alt or Command Option and click on this folder arrow here next to Rising Sun. Click on that, then reopen the folder, and everything is collapsed. Okay, so if you want to run the action again, all you need to do is delete the Rising Sun folder, and then I've still kept the brush layer hanging around at the top here, so you can just run the action again. And like I said, what I like to do with this action, well, actually pretty much all my actions, is run the effect a few times, because all the effects are generally randomized. So I like to run it 5 to 10 times and pick the best result from those. So maybe run the action a few times, save it out as a PSD file each time. Okay, then you can reopen them and then quickly compare them. And what I also like to do, if I've saved say 10 Photoshop files into a folder, say on the desktop, what I like to do is run this script here. If you go to File, Scripts, Image Processor, okay, all you need to do is select the folder, use this button here, select the folder which has all the PSD files, okay, and then you select a folder which you want to save those Photoshop files out into as a JPEG. Okay, so you select those two folders. Step 3 here, you can just click Save as JPEG, and then when you click on Run, what it's going to do is open up all those Photoshop files. Then it's going to save them out as a JPEG, so you can quickly just click on those JPEGs and scroll through them to compare which effect you like the best. Okay, and then you can simply reopen that Photoshop file and start editing. Okay, right. I'm going to jump back into the Rising Sun folder here, and rather than go down from the top to the bottom, I'm just going to start off with this folder here, the main photo. Just going to jump around a bit. There's quite a few layers and folders here to get through, so I'll move through as fast as I can. So main photo here, you can see that if you turn it on and off, that has pretty much most of the visibility of our subject. Okay, and the first thing you'll notice here on the mask, okay, is that if I hold down Alt or Option and click on that mask, we can go inside, that I've prevented our main subject from showing in this lower part of the design. So you can see when I click back, you can see how his feet kind of fade away. That's coming from this mask. So if you don't want that, you can just hold down Shift and click on it. That will disable the mask, and you can get full visibility back into your subject's feet, or what. So I'm just going to leave it on because I think that looks pretty cool. Okay, so if we go inside the main photo, we have this folder here called Photo Edge Glows. Now if I turn that off and on, you can see that that is the light bleeding into our subject. And like I said, when we were moving that white circle around, you can see that the light bleeds much much more intensely around this area where we place that circle. Okay, so if you think the glows are too strong, firstly you can just lower the opacity of the folder. So I can just select the folder and just click and drag on this opacity here to lower that down. Alright. Or you can just use this mask here. So you can select the mask, hit B. I'm just going to right click and select this soft brush. I can brush black into that mask, which will hide the glows. But I'm going to undo that. Or you can go inside the photo edge glows folder, and there's 3 separate layers which create these effects. So I'm going to turn them all off one by one. So we've got this one here called the light source inner glow. So that is the main light source that's sort of emitted from the circle. Okay, and you can see the opacity of that layer is at 40%. So you can sort of crank that up to increase that glow. Or you could check out the layer style here. So you can see that FX symbol. So if you twirl this open, you can double click on this inner glow here, and that'll bring up the styles for the inner glow. You can play around with the size here if you want that light to bleed in further, or play around with this choke here. Alright, so that's that one. Whoops. And you've got this one below, which is just an overall inner glow. That sort of spreads throughout all of your subject. And then this one here is just an additional glow, sort of boosts everything up a bit. And then you've got this one up the top here, boost edge highlights. This one I just like to turn on and off. It just adds a bit more intensity around the edges, okay, in a slightly different way to the ones in this folder. So you can check that out, just turn it on and off, see if it suits your subject or not. If you go inside there, there's just 2 layers again you can play around with. Okay, we'll jump to this one here now, embers. So if you turn this off, okay, you can see there's those flying embers everywhere. Sometimes I like it, with the effect on, sometimes with it off. So it really depends what you're going for. But if you go inside this folder, you'll see I've got 5 different ember layers, and just by default number 1 is turned on. That one sort of emits the most particles, but you've got these other ones here which are a slightly different style. Okay, so you can just turn them on, see what you think. If you want a lot more particles, you can just duplicate the layer. To do that, you can just hold down Control or Command J to duplicate. I could zoom out here and rotate those. I could scale them up, do things like that. Okay, so let's jump up to, where will we go now? We'll jump to this one here, lower half glow. So if I turn this on and off, you can see what that's doing. It's sort of, you're adding this glow that starts off quite strong at the bottom and fades off. Fades off as we move up. And that is just done through this gradient fill layer. Okay, so you can see you can change the angle here if you wanted to. Also play around the scale. Just by default, it starts off from the bottom and fades off towards the top. Okay, I just like to play around with the opacity of this one. Sometimes I like to turn this right up. Okay, so it really looks bright and hot down here. And sometimes I like to turn it right down. And if I turn it down, maybe I like this area darker, but I prefer this area down the bottom lighter. So again, you can just use a mask. Select the mask, grab a black brush, and what you might need to do is turn up this density slider here, and grab a black brush and brush that away like that. And I'll just undo those. This layer here, I generally like to include with all my actions now. It's called Reveal Normal Photo. I've got in brackets here Brush Mask. So what that is, if I hold down Shift and click on this mask, so currently when I turn this layer on and off, it does nothing. It's because it's hidden by this mask. When a mask is completely black, that layer is not going to do anything because it's not visible. So we'll hold down Shift and click on it to disable it. All I've done here is put the cutout of your photo above all the other effects. Okay, so it's up the top of the layer order here. So when you start brushing, so if I grab a white brush to reveal this layer, select the mask, when I start brushing, it kind of overrides all the other effects. Okay, and then puts your subject nice and visible in those areas that you brush. So if I wanted this guy's hands to sort of pop out from this mist here and be a bit more visible, I'll just brush there. You know, maybe his foot comes through down the bottom here, maybe not that one, maybe this one here. And generally what I like to do is just brush with the 100% opacity, so you can see there. And then to refine the, you know, because it doesn't look quite right, it goes, you know, a bit faded out there to, you know, really visible. So I'll hit B, grab the brush, and maybe I'll just grab like a 30% brush. So with the brush tool there, if I just hit 3 on the keyboard, that'll change the opacity. Now if I just brush black, it'll start, I can, you know, start to really fine tune the visibility of that foot. Like that. Okay, so you can just play around with this layer here to reveal more visibility in your subject. But again, I just like this default result, so I'm just going to leave that off. Might jump back into this main photo folder here because I forgot to cover these 2 layers here. So this layer here, main photo, that is pretty much your subject. Now this layer above here, you've got adjust photo brightness. Okay. Now what I've done with this action is I've actually crushed down the brightness of your subject quite a lot, and it's done through this this handle here. So I drag this all the way to the right. That is the original brightness of your subject. Okay, but what I've done, I have crushed all this down because the light is coming from behind our subject, so it's a bit darker through the middle. So if it's too dark, all you need to do is grab this white handle and start dragging it to the right, like that. Okay? So I'm just going to leave it about there. Okay, that's that one. Now, we've gone over that, we've gone over this one. So boost overall glow is similar to lower half glow. If I turn this on and off, what that does, this step of the action, I took a snapshot of the design and I applied some general glow over all the hotspots. So you can see that there. If you look up through the sides here, it just adds a bit of glow over everything. Again, play around with the opacity. So you can see it's at 70%. So you can just lower this down. Okay, and again, use the mask in areas that, you know, when you drag this down, have a look around the design, ask yourself, you know, does this area look better darker? Does this area look better darker? Does this area look better brighter? So, you know, I could grab my black brush. Maybe I could hide it here because I like it darker in this corner. You know, so make sure to fine tune things through the masks. Okay, I'll quickly cover these 2. Add noise, pretty simple, adds a bit of grain over the entire design. If you like that effect, turn it on. Darken edges, we'll go around the edges and sort of create a vignette effect. Okay. This layer here, foreground fire, if you turn that on, you'll see there's a lot of flames here, and if it's too strong, again, just lower the opacity. And again, you know, maybe I don't want all this brightness down here, so I could just use my black brush and just brush that away. What I also like to do here is reorder the layers a bit. So maybe I want these flames sitting behind my subject. So I could move this down below the main photo, and then it will sit behind him. Okay. So make sure to play around with that. I also like to flip things horizontal, just for it to see if it looks any better. So I could go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Okay. And then what I like to do after I've done that is hit Control or Command Z to undo it. Undo, redo. So all I'm doing there is hitting Control Z, and what I'm doing is looking and comparing which one I think looks better. Okay. But I actually prefer it without it on at all with this. I just like this mist here, so I'll keep that off. But that's definitely an option there if you want to use it. Okay. This layer here, cloud over subject. Again, whenever I've got a layer in brackets here that says opacity. I'm just reminding you to play around with the layer to its opacity. So currently it's at 20%, so I'm going to turn this up to 100%. And what that is, it is just mist that will appear within your subject. Okay, so you see as I change the opacity, it's only appearing within our subject. And you can see I've done that through the mask. Okay, so black, it's not visible, white, it is visible. So play around with that, crank it up, see if it looks any good with your design. Done this. So this one here, reveal original photo background. Go in brackets here, brush mask. Again, the layer mask is black, so it's not doing anything. So you can see in the original photo, you've got this floorboard here. So maybe I want to reveal some of that floorboard. What you can do is select this mask, grab a white brush, and when I start brushing, you can see I start to bring back the original photo there. Okay, and you can start brushing up here as well to reveal some of the original photo, which is pretty cool. Now what you might also want to do is import a completely different background. Okay, so maybe you don't want to use the original background that was behind your subject. So what you want to do here is, I'm just going to turn this off for a second, is go to File, Place Embedded. Okay, and I've got this photo of this building here. Click on that, and you can see it has now landed in our layer panel. I'm just going to zoom out a bit, and you can see I've got this bounding box around our image. Okay, so we just need to scale this, move it. I'm just going to place this here, hit enter to confirm that placement. Alright, so the first thing you might want to do is blend this with the background with all these cloud textures. So what you do is just simply set the blend mode to overlay or soft light. Maybe soft light. Okay, so now you've got the building appearing, which looks really cool. And now we've got this problem with this harsh line here. Okay, so we need to get rid of that. So a way to do that is just click on this icon here to add a layer mask. Okay, so there's two things we can do here. We just hit B and grab that soft brush, and if we brush black down the bottom here, to change the brush size you use the left and right square brackets. So I could just brush this away down the bottom here, or another method you could use is if you hit G, that will activate the gradient tool. Okay, make sure it's going from black to white, and I could just draw a line from the bottom going up here, and it will create a gradient from black to white. So we've got this nice transition here. So that looks really cool. You could lower the opacity if that building's too strong, but I like it. I think it's looking nice. So remember to do that. And if you wanted more photos, just follow that process again. Maybe this side of the design you just want a building. This side here, maybe you want, I don't know, a mountain range or something. So you could use the mask to just, brush away to not have the building visible this side. Import another photo, and then sort of mask it so that it only appears on this side. Okay, so then you create a really advanced looking collage of different photos. Okay, that's looking good. Now, going on down here, we've got this folder here called Wispy Clouds. So if I turn that on and off, so they are all the clouds that appear at the bottom of the design. Again, if it's too strong, just lower the opacity. Okay, if you go inside here, there's two layers, two separate cloud layers, so you can play around with those. Don't forget to do that flip horizontal check again. So I'm just going to use the shortcuts to flip that horizontal. Now when you flip it horizontal, you might get this hard edge here. It's because the layer has sort of moved away from being aligned perfect onto the canvas. So to quickly align it, all you do is hit Control or Command A, and then use these align tools here. So you've got align vertical centers, and then align horizontal centers. Actually, you don't want to do, sorry, I'm going to do that. You don't want to do vertical centers, you only need to do horizontal centers. So click on that one and it will snap it so that it fits nicely. Okay, so yeah, play around with flipping those cloud layers around. I actually think it looked better that side, so I might leave that. Okay, what you can also play around with is adjusting the height of these layers. So I could select one, hit Control or Command T, and you could scale this up further if you wanted to. Okay, let's have a look. Might just leave it where it is, but that's definitely an option. And also don't forget to play around with reordering the folders and layers here, so you could put this up above the main photo, which will appear much stronger over your subject. Okay. This layer here, this is a light source. This was this white circle that we placed during the action. Okay, so you can see when I turn it off, this part here then doesn't look natural because we've got this strong light bleeding in here with no real light source coming from behind him. So when we turn this on, it looks much more natural. Okay, and you can also move this light source around. So I can move this around here. Okay, and it's a smart object. The reason why it's a smart object is because I applied some blur to it, and with a smart object you can keep adjusting that filter effect. So I can just double click on this Gaussian blur text here, and it'll bring up this window. And you see if I drag this to 0, there is our white circle, and you can just click increase this radius, and it will start to blur out, and yeah, look like a hotspot. So I'm going to click OK. If you want more of these hotspots, just hold down Alt or Option, drag down on the layer, that will duplicate it, and then you can move it around like that. Okay, going down here we have these two layers, middle black clouds 1 and 2. Okay, so if you turn those off, you will see that it adds these dark clouds, which helps with the visibility of the form of these wispy clouds. Okay, so you can see without them the clouds disappear quite a bit. You might like that effect, so just turn them on or off, see what works. Okay, if you want them to be even stronger, you can shift select them, hit Control J, just like that. You can see the clouds sort of building up there. Okay, going on down here we have the cloud flames 1 and 2. By default these are turned off, and if you turn them on, they just sort of add these flames that will appear in random spots in the top half of your design. Okay, and you can see in the mask here that I've restricted it to only appear really up the top here, and sort of fades off as we go down. Hold down Shift there, you can see it increases the visibility. And again, the reason why this is only shown in this area is because it is sitting below these black cloud layers. So the black cloud layers are prevented from being totally visible, but if I drag those above, you can see that the visibility there really increases. So play around, yeah, with reordering these layers again, because it really does change the look a lot. I'm just going to turn those off. Now this here is the top black clouds, so if you turn those off, you just get this big white glow, okay, which looks pretty cool in itself, so you can try that. Try to turn it off, see if it looks any good. Also like to play around with the opacity of this layer, so if I just turn this down a bit, you can see that's quite a nice effect, but by default it's at 100%. Okay, so play around with that. Also like to, if I zoom out, you can scale it, so Control or Command T. So I could, I'm just going to turn this off for a second. Control or Command T, I could scale that up, okay, or you could, rotate it. Alright, so definitely want to play around with that. Zoom back in. So this layer here, clouds backing color, if you turn this off, you'll notice that this top area has gone dark. Okay, it's because the entire design, all these layers, has now fallen down onto a grey background. Alright, so if I change this to white now, you'll see it's brought back all this brightness in the clouds, but it's also increased the brightness, you know, in these random areas down the bottom. It's because with this layer here, if I turn it back on, you can see in the mask that I've restricted the white to only appear in this top area. So if I turn it on and off, you can see that it's only boosting the brightness of the clouds in this top area. Alright? But if I hide this mask, hold down shift, click on it, you'll see that then boosts the brightness over the entire design, because, you know, we're hiding that mask, so it's the white is filling our entire canvas. So generally what I like to do here is hold down shift and click on the mask excuse me, and you get a preview of what areas look like a bit brighter. So maybe I want, you know, this cloud here to look much more like a hotspot. So I would just grab my white brush, select the mask, so I want to show more of this layer. If I just click there, I can just add a little bit of a hotspot there as well, maybe over there. Okay, so you can see the mask now where I've brushed those in. So just keep that in mind, that by default I have only restricted this brighter area to appear in this top area of your design. Okay, let's go back all the way up to the top now, and we've got this layer here called Adjust Overall Color. This is just really to play around fine tuning the colors a bit. So if we double click on this layer, I've just applied a few default settings here, but you've got your tone range, shadows, midtones and highlights. So what I like to do is start off with the midtones, and all you want to do is drag these handles around, and you can see it starts really affecting the colors. So you can add more magenta. Okay, so you're not restricted to these default colors. You can quickly jump into this one here and play around with these colors. Alright, overall saturation, if you feel that the design is too saturated, just lower the saturation down a little bit. Okay, and we'll start removing a lot of the color. This layer here, contrast 1 in opacity, if I turn this on and off, you see that adds a lot of contrast, and it's at 30%, so I'll turn it to 100. You see that's way too contrasty. 0, not enough contrast, so by default I've got it 30%. You can play around with that and see what looks good with your design. Contrast 2 and 3, if I turn these off, okay, so without those layers the design is very flat. Contrast 3, and then turn on contrast 2, and that sort of brings it all together. Now I've got this folder here called color options. If you go inside here, I've got 10 different color options here, and they're all set up the same way. So if you, by default I've got color option 1 turned on, so if you turn it off it removes all the color. Alright, so just keep that in mind, that color option 1 is turned on. If you go inside this folder, this is a couple of layers, and the way I've set these up is that you have the color in the top half of your design and then the color in the bottom half. So if you just click on this box here, double click, and change the color, you can actually apply a totally new color to the top half of your design. And that's the same with the bottom half. Maybe you want like a purple. Okay, so definitely play around with those. And then you've got this layer here called Selected Color 1. It's just a adjustment layer to play around with the colors again. So I've just jumped into the neutrals and played around with some of the color ranges there. Turn it on and off. See that there. So turn it on and off, see what you think. But I'm going to stick with the default colors. Alright. And the way these work, yeah, you just turn them on, turn the visibility on for them, and it will apply a different set of colors. But again, it's pretty much the same setup in every folder. I've just added these 10 options for convenience, just for you to flick down to see if any of those really suit your design. But it's really easy just to double click on those boxes and, you know, create your own color mapping. What you can also do is, if you create a where will it do this? If you create a new layer, Control Shift N or Command Shift N, and if you set the blend mode of this layer to color, you can pretty much just paint on any color you want. So if I see B, you know, if I just grab a blue, if I start brushing now, you can see that I can just apply any color I want. And what I like to do is, when I've brushed on a few colours, you hit Control or Command U, and that'll bring up the hue and saturation. And what you can do is just play around with this hue slider here, and you can quickly preview different colours. Maybe I like this blue, and you can play around with the saturation. If it's too strong, you can turn it right up. Play around with the brightness as well. Okay, so I definitely like to do that as well. Just paint on colours. Something else I like to do is sometimes just fine tune the glows a bit. So if I create a new layer, and if you set the blend mode to screen, so what I want to do now is maybe I want to add a larger glow here around his mouth. So I'm just going to hit B, and I'm going to select like an orange here, and if I just brush now, you can see that it adds a nice big glow. Maybe I want this to be more like an orange, yeah, like that. Okay, so I always like to brush on with 100% opacity, and then sort of just drag this down the opacity to get something that works well. Maybe you want to add a bit more of a glow come from this, maybe in here. Okay, it's really simple to do. And again, when I've applied those glows, I always like to check that hue and saturation slider again. So Control Command U, and I can just drag this slider to change the color of those glows. So I might just add a bit more red. Okay. So now let's turn the city image back on. I'm going to turn this layer back on as well, but I just want to hide. Whoops, actually what I might do, I'll fill the mask in entirely black to hide it, and I'll brush white again, maybe it's 50% opacity down here. Let's change these colors, so let's go into here, let's change that top color to a blue. Just going to go to this glow layer and change this glow around a bit. Let's go to the bottom half color. Also, another little thing I like to do here is create, so it might be chopped off, a hue and saturation adjustment layer above one of these. If you hold down Alt or Option and move your mouse between those two layers, you see that white box of the arrow, that will create a clipping mask so that this adjustment layer only now affects this layer below. So now I can just use this hue slider to quickly preview some different colors down the bottom here. Okay, move that saturation a bit. Green looks really cool. Okay, now I might jump to this. First I'll just turn this on and off and see what that's doing. Looks okay. I'll jump to this adjust overall color. And what I might do first is just reset it. So you use this button here just to reset the adjustment layer settings. Now I'm just going to play around with these handles a bit. Blue. I'll check the shadows. Okay, and you use this button here just to preview before you hold down then release it. It just previews before you made those settings and after. Okay, I might just change this opacity. Might just use about 50% of that. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. I think I actually still prefer the original red colors. So can I undo all the way back? How far back can I undo? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I think that looks better. Suits the design really well, but that's just the process I go through just to experiment with the colors. Okay, so just don't forget to play around with that. So the last thing I might do here is just add some overall sharpening to the design, then we'll compare it against the original. So what I like to do is you select the top visible layer or folder, and we want to create a snapshot of our design, so everything that we see onto one layer. So to To do that, hold down Control Shift Alt E or Command Shift Option E, and that merges everything you see onto one layer. So if I move this layer around now, okay, now you go to Filter, Other, High Pass, okay, so you can see you get this very subtle outline of all the details, and you want to keep this number really low. So I generally go for 1 or 2, but I'll go for 2 so it's a bit more visible. Now what I want to do is just remove all the color. So you can see if I zoom in here, get these traces, this get a bit of red and green and blue. So to get rid of that, just hit Control Shift U or Command Shift U. That will quickly remove all the color. Then set the blend mode of this layer to hard light, vivid light, or linear light. We'll go linear light. Okay. Now if I just bring this opacity to 0 and 100, so you can see that sharpening there. So you probably don't want to use it at 100, and I might change this to like hard light. It's not as strong. Okay, you might be able to see that as I turn it on and off. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to just put this inside the Rising Sun folder and compare this against the original. So there's the before, and that is the Rising Sun action. Okay guys, that is it. If you're having trouble with the action, I'll put a link to my help page below. If you run into a specific error, just look for that error on the help page. If you're still stuck, send me an email and I'll help you out. But if not, have a good time using the action.